Imagine being mocked by your boss, challenged to fly a helicopter with the promise of marriage if you succeed. Sounds insane, right? But what if I told you that the real twist wasn't in the challenge but in who I really was? Stick around to find out how I turned the tables and proved everyone wrong. This is a story you won't want to miss. It was a chilly Monday morning when I first walked into the office, and as always, the atmosphere was filled with the usual hum of conversations and the clicking of keyboards. The city's skyline glimmered through the large glass windows, but inside everything felt mechanical. The fluorescent lights above buzzed faintly, and the soft murmur of chatter created a sense of monotony. Everyone was glued to their screens, working through endless spreadsheets, planning meetings, and taking phone calls. I, however, was lost in thought, feeling like I was constantly trying to keep up with the hustle. I had started working at this corporate office a year ago, eager to prove myself in the high-pressure world of business. It was one of the best firms in the industry, and the competition was fierce. My colleagues were all seasoned professionals, and while I wasn't a complete novice, I often found myself struggling to stand out amidst the sea of experienced executives. Most of my coworkers were in their mid-30s or older, with years of business know-how behind them. Here I was, fresh from my business degree, still trying to figure out how to make an impact in a world that seemed to move at lightning speed. I tried my best to keep up with the workload, staying late, coming in early, and diving into each project with all the enthusiasm I could muster. But it was clear that some people saw me as just another newbie who was still finding their footing. Among these people was my boss, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson was an imposing figure in the office, standing at over 6 feet tall, with sharp features and a no-nonsense attitude. He had a way of commanding the room. He was the kind of person who, when he spoke, everyone listened. Even if he was just making a sarcastic comment, his words could sting, and his criticisms, while often veiled in humor, were sharp enough to leave a lasting impression. He was known for making quick judgments about people, quick to praise and quicker to criticize. This particular Monday morning, I had a feeling things might not go according to the usual routine. It started with an email from Mr. Johnson asking me to come to his office. It wasn't unusual to get a request like that, but the subject line read, "Test of Character." A knot tightened in my stomach. My mind raced with possibilities. What kind of test was he talking about? Was this another of his infamous power plays? Or was it a simple check-in about my recent performance? When I walked into his office, the first thing I noticed was the smirk on his face. His office was sleek, minimalist, and filled with expensive furniture. Exactly what you'd expect from someone in his position. The windows behind him offered a stunning view of the city, but for once the view didn't catch my attention. Mr. Johnson himself did. He was leaning back in his chair, legs crossed, hands steepled in front of his mouth. His piercing gaze focused on me. "Ah, there you are," he said, his voice smooth, almost mocking. "Take a seat." I did as I was told, sitting across from his large polished desk, which was filled with neatly stacked files and the occasional half-drunk coffee cup. I glanced around the room, trying to gauge the mood, but everything felt eerily still. I could tell something was off, but I couldn't put my finger on it. "So," Mr. Johnson began, his tone suddenly playful, "how's your day going? Busy as usual?" I nodded, though I wasn't sure where this was headed. "Yes, just the usual tasks and meetings." He leaned forward, his expression hardening. "I've been watching you, you know. You've got potential, but you're not quite there yet. The thing is, you're still too safe. You play it too safe. You're a dime a dozen. You blend in with the crowd." I felt a sting in my chest. I had been working so hard to prove myself, but there it was. He had reduced me to just another face in the crowd. "Tell me something," he continued, his eyes narrowing. "Do you think you have what it takes to stand out? To prove you're not just another cog in the machine?" I hesitated. Well, yes, I believe I have a lot to offer. I just need the chance to prove myself." He stared at me for a long moment, and I couldn't quite read his expression. Then, out of nowhere, he gave a small chuckle. All right, here's your chance. How about you prove it by doing something that no one else would dare? I was taken aback. What do you mean? He stood up abruptly, walking to the large windows that looked out over the city. You see that helicopter out there? He pointed to a sleek private helicopter perched on the rooftop of the building next door. That's mine, and I need you to fly it. I blinked, not sure if I had heard him correctly. Wait, what? You want me to fly that helicopter? He turned to face me, a smug smile on his face.
Yes, I do.
I'm not saying you have to do anything spectacular. Just take it for a spin. You said you're ambitious, right? Well, here's your test. Pilot that helicopter and I'll marry you. My heart stopped. Was he serious? The words hung in the air like an absurd joke, but Mr. Johnson's face remained as unreadable as ever. I'm not sure what you mean by that. I stammered, caught completely off guard. Was he playing some sick game with me? It didn't make sense. Marry me? I had been in the company for a year, and while we had a professional relationship, there was nothing romantic between us. It felt like a strange and twisted challenge designed to test my limits. Oh, come on, he said, his smirk widening. Don't overthink it. Just show me that you can handle something outside your comfort zone. I know you have the potential. But if you can't even take the wheel of a helicopter, what good are you to me? I was stunned. I had heard of office power games, but this was a whole new level. He was using a challenge like flying a helicopter to test my worth, to mock my ambition, and to push me into a corner. It was as if he wanted to break me, force me to do something ridiculous, just to prove that I wasn't cut out for this world. But here's the thing. What Mr. Johnson didn't know was that I wasn't just some corporate rookie trying to find my place. I had a secret, one that had nothing to do with business strategies or corporate jargon. I had a background that Mr. Johnson never could have anticipated. I had been a trained pilot since I was 22. Flying had always been a passion of mine, and while I had never mentioned it to anyone at work, it was one of the few things in my life that made me feel truly alive. I had spent years earning my private pilot's license and had flown small aircrafts on weekends when I could. Helicopters, well, they were a bit more advanced, but I had taken the courses and done the training. I was more than capable of flying that helicopter if I had to, but I wasn't about to let Mr. Johnson know that just yet. Instead of reacting immediately, I let the silence stretch out between us. His words echoed in my mind. I was being baited. This was a power move, a challenge he thought I would never take up. Well, he finally broke the silence. What do you say? I took a deep breath. I could feel the weight of his expectation bearing down on me. But I wasn't just going to back down. Not now, not after everything I had worked for. It was time to show him that I was more than capable of handling whatever absurd task he threw my way. I stood up from the chair, squared my shoulders, and looked him in the eye. All right, I'll fly the helicopter, but I'll do it because I want to prove something, to you and to myself, not because you think you can push me around. Mr. Johnson's smile faltered, but only for a moment. Then he gave a quick nod, clearly not expecting me to agree so easily. Well then, go ahead. Show me what you've got. With that, I walked out of his office, my heart pounding with a mix of excitement and disbelief. I wasn't sure if this was a test of my skills or my patience, but one thing was certain. I wasn't about to let him win. Not today. The sound of the helicopter's rotor blades filled the air as I stepped onto the rooftop, my mind swirling with thoughts. I had walked out of Mr. Johnson's office, not fully understanding how I'd gotten myself into this situation. But now here I was, standing at the edge of the building, staring at a sleek helicopter that awaited me. Mr. Johnson's challenge had felt like an absurd joke, one that pushed me to the edge of absurdity. But there was no turning back now. I knew what was at stake. It wasn't just about proving my worth in the eyes of my boss. It was about showing myself that I was more than the person he saw me as, a young, inexperienced employee who could be easily pushed around. I took a deep breath as I walked toward the helicopter, each step echoing in my ears. The world around me seemed distant, The noise of the office, the hustle of the city below, all faded as my mind focused solely on the task ahead. As I reached the helicopter, I could feel my pulse quicken. Flying a helicopter wasn't like anything else I had done before. It required absolute precision, focus, and control. But for me, it was more than just about flying. It was about showing Mr. Johnson that I was capable of handling anything thrown my way. The helicopter's cockpit gleamed in the sunlight. I could see my reflection in the polished surfaces, and for a brief moment I saw a different version of myself. A version that wasn't afraid of a challenge, a version that had everything to prove. With a practiced motion, I climbed into the cockpit. The controls were familiar to me, but they felt more intense this time. My hands moved instinctively, flipping switches and checking systems as I prepared to take off. I had been trained for this. Years of training, countless hours spent learning the mechanics of flight. The only difference now was the audience. As I glanced down, I saw Mr. Johnson standing at the edge of the rooftop, his arms crossed. He was watching me intently, a look of both amusement and skepticism on his face. His expectation was clear. He thought I would fail. This was his test. He had set the bar high, but I wasn't about to let him see me falter. I started the engine, and the hum of the rotor blades seemed to steady my nerves. I had flown solo many times before, but this felt different. There was a weight to it now. Not just because of the helicopter, but because of what it represented. This wasn't just a test of skill. It was a test of who I was, and I wasn't going to let Mr. Johnson define me. With a steady hand, I lifted the helicopter off the ground. The building below began to shrink as I rose higher into the sky. The cool wind rushed past me, and for a brief moment I felt at peace. The world below seemed so distant, and in that moment, I felt a sense of control I had never experienced before. I performed a few gentle maneuvers, adjusting the throttle and the cyclic stick with ease. My hands moved with precision, guiding the helicopter through the air. Everything I had learned from my training came rushing back, and I realized that this was no different from any other flight I had taken. It was just another challenge to conquer. As I flew higher, I noticed Mr. Johnson following my every move from the rooftop below. He seemed intrigued now, his posture shifting slightly. I could almost see the wheels turning in his head. Was he starting to question his judgment? Was he beginning to realize that I wasn't just a young employee he could play games with? I decided to test myself further. I took the helicopter through a series of sharp turns and even performed a small loop. The wind whistled as I maneuvered through the sky, the helicopter responding effortlessly to my commands. I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins, but it was a controlled excitement. The kind that came from doing something I loved, and then, in a split second, I made a quick descent toward the rooftop, smoothly bringing the helicopter back to the landing pad. As the helicopter's wheels gently touched the roof, I could hear the faint buzz of the engine winding down. My heart was racing, but I felt a deep sense of satisfaction. I had done it. Not only had I passed Mr. Johnson's challenge, but I had done it on my own terms. I stepped out of the helicopter, my feet landing softly on the rooftop. I glanced over at Mr. Johnson, who was now standing with a completely different expression on his face. His arms, which had once been crossed in arrogance, were now at his sides. He was staring at me, his mouth slightly agape. "Nice job," he finally said. Though his voice lacked the usual mocking tone, there was a sense of awe in it now, something I had never heard from him before. I couldn't help but smile, walking toward him slowly. "I told you I was capable." He nodded slowly, as if still processing what he had just witnessed. I didn't expect that," he admitted, his eyes narrowing as he studied me. "I thought you'd fail. I thought this was going to be a lesson in humility for you." I raised an eyebrow. "And you thought this challenge would break me, right? Maybe I'm not the person you thought I was." His expression softened slightly, and I could see the shift in his demeanor. For the first time, he wasn't trying to belittle me. He wasn't trying to assert dominance over me. Instead, he was looking at me with a newfound respect. "I've been wrong about you," he said quietly, almost to himself. "I misjudged you. I wasn't about to let him off the hook that easily." Well, I've been wrong about you too, I said, a bit of my own fire coming through. Maybe next time you'll think twice before mocking someone just to prove a point. For a moment there was silence between us. The only sound was the soft whirring of the helicopter's engine winding down. Then Mr. Johnson cleared his throat, his eyes meeting mine once more. You've earned my respect. I can see that you're more than capable. I'll admit I didn't expect this. I nodded, my chest swelling with pride. And that's the lesson here. Never underestimate someone just because they don't fit your idea of what they should be. As I walked past him, heading back toward the office, I could feel a shift in the atmosphere. Something had changed. I wasn't just the new employee anymore. I had proven myself, not just as someone who could meet expectations, but as someone who could exceed them in ways no one had anticipated. For the first time in my career, I felt like I was standing on solid ground, no longer a mere cog in the machine. I had just taken control of my own narrative, and that felt like a victory greater than any promotion or title I could ever earn. As I entered the building, I glanced back at Mr. Johnson one last time. He was standing there watching me with a mixture of disbelief and admiration. He had seen the person I had always known I could be, the person who wasn't afraid to rise to any challenge no matter how absurd it seemed. I had passed the test, and I wasn't done proving myself just yet. The rooftop was quiet now, the only sound the faint buzz of the helicopter as it cooled down after its brief but thrilling flight. I had just walked away from a test that had seemed impossible, a challenge that was meant to humble me, to make me realize my place. But now, as I glanced back at Mr. Johnson, who was standing near the edge of the rooftop, a strange sense of calm washed over me. I had done it. Not only had I passed the test, but I had done it in a way that proved I was more than just a pawn in his game. But what happened next was something I could never have predicted. As I walked back toward the door leading to the office, I could hear Mr. Johnson's footsteps behind me, his pace slower, more measured now. His usual air of arrogance had vanished, replaced with a quiet, almost reflective tone. When I reached the door, he called out to me. "Wait," he said, his voice uncharacteristically serious. I paused, turning to face him. The once confident man who had mocked me so openly just hours earlier was now standing with a look that was hard to read. It wasn't pity or disappointment, but something else. Respect? Regret? I couldn't tell, but I was intrigued. "Yes, Mr. Johnson?" I asked, my voice steady, though part of me was curious about what he would say next. He looked at me for a long moment, his arms uncrossed, his gaze softening. "You know, I've been doing this for a long time, making quick judgments, issuing challenges, setting up tests like this one. But today you showed me something that I didn't expect. You didn't back down. You didn't let me control the narrative. And you didn't let me break you. I didn't think you had it in you." I blinked, unsure of how to respond. Was he actually complimenting me? This was a side of Mr. Johnson I had never seen. He wasn't the domineering boss who used sarcasm to put people in their place. This was someone different, someone who for the first time was acknowledging my ability to rise above the challenges he had set for me. It was a strange moment, one that caught me off guard. "I didn't think you'd make it," he continued, his voice quieter now. "I thought you'd fail. I thought I'd be the one who would teach you a lesson. But now I see that I'm the one who needs to learn something." I raised an eyebrow, unsure of what he was implying. "Learn something?" He nodded slowly. "Yeah. I've spent so much of my career testing people, pushing them to their limits, using them as tools in my own game. I thought that was what leadership was about. But what I didn't realize was that real leadership isn't about breaking people down to see what they're made of. It's about giving them the space to grow, to show their potential. I've been stuck in my own way of thinking, but you, today, showed me a different path." I was stunned into silence. Was he actually admitting that he had made a mistake? That he had misjudged me? That he had misjudged how to lead? For a brief moment I could feel a shift happening, not just in the dynamic between us, but in how I viewed the entire situation. This challenge, this mockery, had never been about me proving myself to him. It had been about him facing his own limitations as a leader, about realizing that his power didn't come from making others feel small, but from empowering them to be their best. The truth was, I wasn't the only one who had been tested that day. Mr. Johnson had been forced to confront his own weaknesses, to come face to face with the fact that his approach to leadership, his tendency to belittle, to mock, to push people to their breaking point was flawed, and in the process he had learned something valuable. True strength didn't lie in dominance or control, but in recognizing the potential in others and nurturing it. I took a deep breath, the weight of the moment settling in. "I didn't do it for you," I said softly. "I did it for myself. I needed to prove to myself that I was capable of handling whatever challenges you threw at me. And now I've done that." Mr. Johnson looked at me, a mixture of respect and something else, perhaps gratitude, flickering in his eyes. He had pushed me to the edge thinking it would break me, but instead I had shown him that I could soar, that I could rise above the games he played, and now he seemed to understand something he had never seen before. "I get it now," he said, his voice a little quieter, a little more vulnerable than usual. "I see you for who you really are, and I'm not going to make the same mistake again." I nodded, feeling a sense of closure wash over me. There was no triumph in gloating, no need to rub my success in his face. This wasn't about winning a game. It was about growth for both of us. Mr. Johnson had set the stage, thinking I would crumble, but instead we both walked away with something more valuable than any victory. As I turned back toward the door to head inside, Mr. Johnson spoke again. "I don't know what happens from here," he said, "but I want to make sure that from now on we both have a chance to grow. No more games, no more testing each other. I'm ready to move forward differently." I stopped for a moment, then nodded. That's all I've ever wanted. A chance to prove myself, not to you, not to anyone else, but to myself. With that, I stepped into the office, leaving the rooftop behind. And for the first time in my career, I felt like I was truly in control of my own path. The world outside was still as busy as ever, but inside me everything had shifted. I was no longer just a young employee struggling to fit in. I was someone who had proven that I could face any challenge, no matter how absurd, and emerge stronger for it. And in that moment, I realized that I hadn't just passed a test. I had rewritten the rules of the game. And as for Mr. Johnson, well, he had learned a lesson that would change the way he led. And maybe, just maybe, the way he saw people like me. The twist wasn't just that I had succeeded in the test. It was that, in the end, it was Mr. Johnson who had been forced to confront his own limitations. And that was the most unexpected twist of all. And that's the story, folks. What a twist, right? From being underestimated to proving everyone wrong. If you enjoyed this story and want more exciting content, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to click the bell icon so you never miss an update. Share your thoughts in the comments below. What would you have done in this situation? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.